Alrighty. Thank you. Good morning, everybody, and welcome. You are here at the First Unitarian Church of Alton. Greetings to all of you who are also watching online. Everybody say hello. Woo! Yay. My name is Robin Berkeley. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the president of the congregation, and I also serve as a worship associate. The First Unitarian Church of Alton is a small congregation here in Alton, Illinois, spiritually led by the Reverend Dr. Claudia Hall. Our mission drives us to live our values. Our mission reads as follows. We are outward reaching, inward seeking. We're creating and nurturing an intentional community that values acceptance, social justice, and the embodiment of UU principles. Come, let us question together. I'm so glad that you are here, whether in the sanctuary or online. We welcome everyone to this home of comfort, spirit, justice, and hope. We're Unitarian Universalists. We open our service with a prelude by our accompanist, Joy. Love me some Helen Reddy. We are women, let us roar. An important ritual in the Unitarian Universalist faith is the lighting of our chalice. Unitarian Universalists have many different interpretations of the flaming chalice, including the light of reason, the warmth of community, and the flame of hope. Please join me in celebrating all of these reasons and more. And if you're watching at home and have a chalice or a candle, please light it now as we all join in saying the unison words projected on the screen. We hallow this time together by kindling the lamp of our heritage. So our opening words today are from actually Holly Near herself when asked about her music and her activism. It's on her website. And today's service, as I said to you, is going to be about women's music specifically, and Holly Near, putting a focus on Holly Near's work as a social justice advocate. I do not separate my music from my heart, nor do I separate my ideas from my daily life. I open myself up to learning as much as I can about humanity and this mysterious life experience, but I do not relate to political work as a series of causes. Moment by moment, I integrate what I learn into my personal life, personalizing my politics. It is from this personal place that I write my songs. Holly Near. So I pray that we all are open to learning on a daily basis, to seeing the world through her eyes, perhaps, about what we can do just a little bit more to ensure justice and hope for all. So our first hymn is one of our favorites, and it's in our gray hymnal. We Are a Gentle, Angry People, written by Holly Near. So our music today, some of it will be videos. Some of it we have lyrics that were handed out to you. Sing along if you want to, or good, just sit back and enjoy. I'll be humming along up here, so, enjoy what you can. Please rise in body or spirit for number 170 in the gray hymnal. We are a gentle, angry people. We are be seated. So I would, it's easy to kind of look at all of our principles and go, oh yeah, all of those would probably align, and that's a cop out because I really want to get more specific when I think about what really inspires me, in doing these sermons. And I would say probably that the two most important ones are the sixth and the seventh, because what Holly sings about and what the women's music movement generally is about is a world community with peace, love, peace. I'm going to try that one more time. Peace, liberty, and justice for all. I got it. See? And respect for that interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. So both of those just really resonate, right? Because she's talking about social justice, about making sure that we're out there, we're marching, we're using our voices, using our activism to make the world a better place. And so if I have to think about of those seven, those are the two that really make it. So I hope that, as we get into the message and we start looking at this a little bit more deeply, you'll see that connection, I hope, of course. And as I said, a lot of the songs are already videoed. Some of them have the lyrics attached to them, and it's easy to sing along. And some of them are things that we already know, like the song we just sang. It was really wonderful to be in Madison to actually get to meet her. I have a picture with her. It's really cool. And get to meet her and to talk with her. And I said to her point blank, I said, we UUs just love you. She goes, oh, I know. I said, so, if I need to use your videos, can I do that? Can I use any of your videos, to use in my services with permission? And she was like, oh, yeah, absolutely. So we got our call this morning, finally, our email this morning going, yeah, just go for it. So, and it's really nice to sort of connect with people when we talk about how we want to use it for services and use music from so many different people. I'm sure Joy's had that experience as she's done so much of that work for us in the last few years. Because the licensing has gotten a little bit more strict on YouTube about making sure that we have permission to use people's videos and music and things like that. So, and I want to put a shout out to the Cascade UU Fellowship in Washington State that gave us permission to use one of the next upcoming videos that are coming up here that they put together, which was pretty cool. It was for a women's service, so I thought it was appropriate. So anyway, let me move forward with our joys and sorrows. Take a moment to take a deep breath. And as part of our weekly worship service, we take time for that expression of joys, concerns, and sorrows. And in front of us is a bowl that is filled with water and stones, and they're available here and in the back for you to place in the bowl that represents your joys or concerns. So what we're going to do is start on the right, come around the back, come up to here on my left, place your stone or stones in the water. You can take as many as you need. Some days I got a handful that I throw in there. Some days it's just one. But if you're home, please feel free to place a stone in a bowl of water or simply to sit there quietly and offer your joys and sorrows to the universe. So we may begin. All right, so Our next hymn, not our first hymn, our next hymn is by Holly Near. It's called I Am Willing. And she sang this a cappella, at the festival. And we were in the hotel in Middleton, Wisconsin, which is where the National Women's Music Festival was held. It's sort of this square with an open area in the middle, and all the rooms are sort of on the outside. And when she started singing the song, you could hear the sound echoing off the top of the walls. And as you looked up, you could see these women all hanging over the banisters and, flying their rainbow flags and all sorts of things. And it was just this really powerful experience hearing this woman who has just been an icon for generations, up there, and everybody just joining in and feeling one. I like that sort of goosebumpy feeling was really fabulous. So this video, as I said, was used with permission from the Cascade UU Fellowship. Again, thank you very much, folks. I got a text message from the guy. I'm on my way to the airport. Yeah, go ahead and use it. No problem. Like, all right, great. So let's play the song. Thank you. And the lyrics are up here, I know. So.
I am open and I am willing, for to be hopeless would seem so strange. It dishonors those who go before us, so lift me up to the light of change. There is a hurting in my family, and there is sorrow in my town. There is a panic all across the nation, and there is wailing the whole world round. But I am open and I am willing, for to be hopeless would seem so strange. It dishonors those who go before us, so lift me up to the light of change. May the children see more clearly, and may the elders be more wise. May the winds of change caress us, even though they burn our eyes. But I am open and I am willing, for to be hopeless would seem so strange. It dishonors those who go before us, so lift me up to the light of change. Give me a mighty yoke to hold my confusion, and give me a desert to hold my fears. Give me a sunset to hold my wonder, and give me an ocean to hold my tears. But I am open and I am willing, for to be hopeless would seem so strange. It dishonors those who go before us, so lift me up to the light of change.
Always brings tears to my eyes. Hearing her sing it live is always an experience that you you want to have, when you get a chance. Please do. Okay, so our reading today is an excerpt from an academic article, strangely enough. It's called Feeling Women's Culture, Women's Music, Lesbian Feminism, and the Impact of Emotional Memory by Jill Dolan. This was on the Princeton University website. I think I forgot the website actual name, but I know we've got it somewhere. Maybe not. Okay. So this is just the beginning excerpt of this article. Obviously, she goes into way more detail later on. I continue to find myself jolted by 35-year-old memories that still inspire my activism simply through the depth of feeling the events I recall inspire. Affect studies, which have become such a vital area of inquiry in feminist and queer theory over the last decades, provides a useful framework for my investigation. I'm interested in how the sharp feelings that motivated my own politics have been discounted before scholars, along with many other lesbian feminists in the 70s, have been discounted before scholars really had a chance to analyze what all those heightened emotions, often in community organized moments of performance, accomplished. My goal in this essay is to describe those emotions here in some detail so that I can tease out the feelings provoked by dancing in lesbian bars and attending women's music performances, especially moved me and many of my contemporaries into the political activism and systems of belief that transformed our lives. Women's music albums and performances were among the most audible, visible, powerful examples of emotion-fueled 1970s underground cultural production. That's a mouthful. In the late 20th and early 21st centuries, examples of U.S. popular culture that caricature women who adopted lesbian feminism's credo and that represent the movement as a naive, stereotypically gendered politic, women's music is often the touchstone, representing it as it does a powerful signifier of the time and its style. Generations of young people recognize the moment women's music recalls mostly through representations of unshaven women adorned with labrysses, the double axe that symbolizes hallowed matriarchy. Saw one in a flag in a bar Saturday night. It was very interesting. The double axe that symbolizes matriarchy, and amulets celebrating goddesses in the non-alcoholic, scent-free coffee houses where they ate macrobiotic food and were entertained by monotone, untalented lesbian poets who droned for hours at poor quality microphones. Certainly that stereotype was based on a partial truth. Yet while the image of white women crooning over their guitars might be iconic, it also reduces to caricature a culture that offered a rich, conflicted, and nuanced sense of community. For many American women who came out in the mid to late 70s, going to women's music concerts and frequenting lesbian bars helped us relocate ourselves as subjects of history. So, I'll move into the message next. Thank you. And for some of you that you might go, I never heard of women's music. Isn't it just women who sing? Well, no, it's a little bit more complex than that. And I'm sure there's probably even women in this room that may not be familiar with the genre. I will tell you, when I came out, 20 years ago. I came out 20 years ago, and my first girlfriend sent me Chris Williamson's Changer and the Changed, which was the iconic first women's music album. I'll say album because it was a record at the time. How that was distributed to people, and she sent me that CD, and she says, well, this is, step one in your lesbian education. I'm like, oh, thank you. I appreciate that. And it was the first album that was put out by Olivia Records, which I'll get into in a few moments here. But it was the first one put out and it was commercially successful. It is still iconic today. It's still in print. You can certainly listen to it on Spotify if you want to, but she's out there singing and still doing concerts and all sorts of things. And she represents one branch of sort of what that women's music movement was about, which is sort of women loving women. And that's why largely it's a lesbian following. But they make it really clear in all sorts of things that I've been reading up on this stuff is that it's not just about women loving women, right? It's also about self-love. It's about empowering women, and that men can absolutely be a part of this. But that's also a bone of contention amongst a lot of people who are engaged in that women's music movement. But the beautiful thing about women's music is that launched the careers of people like Holly Near. Now, Holly had started out as an actress, I think. Then she got into songwriting, and then, of course, where she is today as a singer-songwriter, social justice advocate. But Meg Christian, Tracy Chapman, Sweet Honey in the Rock, and Ani DeFranco, Melissa Etheridge, Emma's Revolution, Pamela Means, Indigo Girls, Tony Amos. I mean, literally, I can go on. But it was these women and what they envisioned that really, in alignment with the women's rights movement in the 70s, sort of opened up the door for music to really vary and not just be based on a heteronormative model of what it meant to love and be loved. And it also embraced, of the times, the social justice activism that was happening in the 60s and the 70s. So, again, going back to that, where did that genre evolve? It evolved from the activism and the social commentary that was going on in the late 60s and into the 70s and beyond. It was instrumental in that central fight for women's rights, who found they literally had no home in the normative music scene that was dominated by men. And women's music is music about women, for women, sung by women, produced by women, about issues that, shock of shocks, matters to women, but should matter to everybody. As I said before, often when they're talking about women loving women, they certainly mean lesbian love, right? And women who fall in love with and want to marry and be with a female partner, or bisexual women, for that matter. But it doesn't have to be limited. And everything that I've read has said it doesn't have to be limited necessarily to somebody who's lesbian, that you can think of it as a form of self-love. And I really appreciated that notion, because I think women's music should be empowering to everybody, and thinking about those who are marginalized in many ways. So it also focuses on social justice issues. That's the other branch of it. And some of it blends together. And Holly's music often blends both. It blends this notion of social justice activism, as well as sort of sexual orientation and women loving women, and really sort of breaking the mold on gender stereotypes and gender norms. So that's all, and that's part of what Holly has to say. She goes, this is not just a thing. It's not like they're not isolated causes. They're all tied together, which again ties into that seventh principle that we have, which is it's this interdependence of life, right? You can't make a change here without it affecting things everywhere else. And so this music was meant to help with that movement and also give people a safe place to just be. So I think that's a good thing. And these are issues that are really near and dear to us as UUs, right? I mean, anti-war, certainly in the 60s and into the early 70s. We're still anti-war, we get it, right? Women's rights movement, which was, kind of came out of that civil rights movement, the civil rights movement in and of itself, climate change, LGBT rights, all of these things are represented in this music and this fight that had to be. At its peak, Olivia Records was iconic, and it was the place to go, and it was developed to make sure that women had a safe place to be able to produce their music. And they decided it was like, we're going to just do it all ourselves. And they needed to train people to learn how to do these things that were traditionally considered male jobs. And women, of course, embraced it like they always do, rolled up their sleeves and figured it out. I mean, like Rosie the Riveter, right? I mean, you just do it because you don't have a choice. You just figure it out. And so women's music sort of reached its height probably, I don't know. The last Michigan festival was 2015, I think, if I remember correctly from reading something and talking to some friends recently. But at its peak, maybe 15, 20 years ago, they had an abundance of musicians. And there's still many women who embrace the women's music movement. Music festivals like Michigan, the MishFest, and of course the National Women's Music Festival, which I recently attended for the very, very first time. When I came out, I never even heard of this stuff. I mean, it was, because as a heterosexual woman, or at the time identifying as heterosexual, it wasn't part of my genre. It wasn't part of something that I was exposed to me. You grow up in a sort of a white conservative suburb, and you expect that that's all that life is until you break free of those bonds and you go, whoa, there's a whole world out there. How about that? So it was it was interesting for me to learn more about this movement and to learn more about the music. Michigan, I never got a chance to go. Partly it was because of my annual conference is usually at the same time Michigan usually was, that in the beginning of August, and professional or hanging out, and I'm like, well, sometimes you just got to do the professional because that's what helps me to keep my job, pay the bills, those sorts of things. But I really decided this time to go to the festival in Madison because I really wanted to have that experience. It had been something that I always was sad that I never got a chance to see. But there's a number of reasons why I didn't do that, and I'll get there in a few moments. But women's music, as I learned at this festival, is changing in a good way because change is change, and change is a big part of what's kind of going on. And what they started talking about at the music festival is what the singers of the future are going to be singing about and what matters to them. And Holly gave the keynote speech at that event and pretty much said, our future is going to be what people want it to be, right? Bye, Mark. Good to see you. Oh, yeah, no problem. So that people want it to be to advocate for the issues that matters to them. And she made it abundantly clear that sometimes it's time to step back and let new blood, new life drive that movement, and to see where it's going. And, at that festival, I'm 60, and the average age there probably was older than I am. And that's a little sad because as we looked around, my friend Joan and I we looked around and we're like, if younger people don't buy into this, if they don't understand the value of music about issues for women, where does that leave us in terms of our movement and our social justice activities? So that was something that Holly was trying to embrace in that moment and to say, look, we've done things a certain way because that was what worked for us. It didn't work for our ancestors. We're doing it now, and now the future needs to make that decision for what it wants to be. But it was definitely, I felt like often there was terminology that was a little anachronistic that people were using. And for example, calling a female partner a lover. Because for me, I'm always kind of uncomfortable with that term as a lesbian because it feels like it sort of boils everything down to it being sexual versus being somebody that I literally just want to spend the rest of my life with at some way or another. And so, I hear that term and I realize that these are people that had to live underground, that had to live hidden away. And I am grateful that I did not have to do that. I am grateful that I got to be me. That people said when I came out nuclear. I did, because 40 years in a freaking closet. I'm like, well, it wasn't quite 40 years, but I was 40 when I came out. By the time I realized it, I was 9, and then I just hid it away for 31 years. But coming out of the closet, I decided authenticity is what mattered most to me, and being true to myself, even if it meant losing friends, losing family, and I almost did. At the end, it was fine, but there was a couple of years it was pretty rough there. So I think that as you hear sort of these terms that that have been historically used, it's one thing to say, oh, it doesn't matter to me. That doesn't connect with me. I also need to understand it in its context, why it happened, why the music movement happened the way it did, and kind of what was behind the scenes on that. I think I told you all a couple of weeks ago, I went to see a play called Steinem, about Gloria Steinem, and it was a fabulous play. It was at the JCC out in the west side of St. Louis. And what Gloria Steinem in that play was talking about is the role, really, in that alignment with the civil rights movement and the women's rights movement, and how much of the women's rights movement was really driven by many Black women, and how important that was, right? So people like Shirley Chisholm and a whole long list of names that I'm not even going to do justice trying to remember. But that the interesting thing is, just as we did in the women's rights movement, we remember Gloria Steinem, but we don't remember necessarily Dolores Huerta. And we don't remember necessarily some of the other women that were really instrumental. When we think about women's rights movement, we think Phyllis Schlafly, who was anti, And we think of, thank you, Phyllis, sorry. Sorry, I don't like you, but that's okay. And also, Gloria Steinem. And we don't really remember that they were equally as important was the work that the Black women did at that time. And it's still an issue that haunts us today, right? Because if we look at what happened in elections down in Alabama, in Georgia, right? It wasn't white women that led the charge. It was Black women that did. And we don't do enough justice to that historically. Like it's a white history. It's a white male history sometimes. And so it is important for us to recognize that, to focus on that, to lift that up and remind people that it wasn't just white women. In fact, if you look at the numbers, it's Black women that drove, Biden getting into office. It really wasn't college-educated white women. There's still a lot of issues with racism, not just in that movement as a whole, in the women's rights movement, but also even in the women's music movement. And I know that's really hard to swallow, but some of the readings that I did on this, people who were engaged in the movement and were there and saw these things firsthand, they said, yeah, the large number of participants in this music movement was white middle class, women, and the Black women were sort of in the background. And lest you think, oh, no, that's not really true, I will tell you that I was sitting in a session at the festival, because the festival is like during the day, there's all these workshops and things you can get engaged in, and then the music starts in the early evening, and they just play music all day long. And I was in a session on microaggressions. And how do we deal with microaggressions? And a woman who was Asian was leading the discussion. And I was among a handful of white women and a handful of Black women that were there. And if you looked around at the music festival, the number of Black women there probably could fit on two hands. And so we sat in there and we were having this discussion. And it was very clear that there was a lot of burning unhappiness at the way Black women were treated, in that movement. And one woman in particular was like, I don't give a damn what you think. She goes, I know what I experienced and I know how I've been treated, and it makes me really sad. And I said, I can do nothing but apologize. I mean, I haven't done anything to you, but I have to, I want to apologize on behalf of the stupidity, And I still think she looked at me kind of askance, during the whole session, but I was there to learn and I was there to listen. And even at one point, this woman was talking about something, and the white woman was trying to talk over her and tell her, no, that's not really what's going on. And somebody said, can you just listen to what she has to say? And everybody kind of looked, and she's like, you're right, I'm sorry. She understood even in that moment she was committing a microaggression because she was not listening to what this woman had to say. So it's a real issue, and it's a real issue. And today, no place is hidden from issues of racism, sexism, homophobia, all those sorts of things. They're there because people are human, and people they're victims oftentimes of their upbringing. But the nice thing about being humans is we're also smart enough to educate ourselves to overcome those sorts of things. That's what we want to be thinking about. So, obviously there's that tight link between the two. And then also the role of trans women in women's spaces. This is a huge one. And it's probably the second reason, maybe not necessarily in importance, but the second reason why I probably never got to Michigan. It was very anti-trans. And the notion was women's space should be women-born women. And I've heard people argue that, and I appreciate that argument. And there were still women at that National Women's Music Festival in 2023 saying, women-born women, we need to be in our own space. And I understand probably in the 60s and 70s why that was important, and I want to honor that. Sorry? Okay. Why in the 60s and 70s that was important, because there was no sense of feeling like there was a safe space for women to be. And maybe that's still true now. Yes, no, I don't know. But I will say, for me personally, I'm not trying to judge anybody. For me, I believe trans women are women. I believe trans women have a role to play in women's music. They're important. So, that butch culture or that trans culture, there's a fine line between, the two. And so I think for me, I want to see trans women in those spaces. And I'm grateful that the National Women's Music Festival didn't have any issues with that. There were trans women, sitting there at the festival with us singing and talking, but there were people that were very vocal about it. They did not make a welcoming space for people who identified in a slightly different manner. So that's something that I know that the movement is also reckoning with and trying to make sense of. That also tied into something that Holly said about, who's a woman? That's not for me to say. It's not. So why does Holly sort of matter to all of this? Again, as I said before, she was an actress and a musician, and she wrote music, and she was singing songs all about these things. She has been in relationships with women. In fact, she was in a relationship, a very visible relationship with Meg Christian, who was in that movement for a long period of time, but she also married a man. And often there were women who really pushed back against that and said, "Oh, you're rejecting womanhood." And she's like, "I'm just accepting who I am in all my totality and letting it be." But as you saw from that quote about social justice, how important it is for her music and her social justice are seamless. They go hand in hand together. She embraces activism. She embraces all the things that we value. So she's taken that part of the movement that was more focused on social justice related issues in an integrated way. And she's the one that sort of pushed that along the line. And of course, that gets the attention of us UUs, even though she's not a UU herself. I know that I think Suzanne said she's going to perform, at the UU church down in Orlando. And she just performed at a UU church up in Rockford about a month ago. So it's something that she's not afraid to go out and do because she knows she's loved by us and how aligned we are with what we value. So I'm going to talk about a couple of key songs. I'm going to start with, we'll go to the last one in the next slide in a few minutes. I'll signal you, Katie, when I'm ready to do that. She has a couple of songs. Obviously, we sang Gentle Angry People, Singing for Our Lives. And again, that's something it's in our gray hymnal. It's not even in the teal hymnal. It's in the gray hymnal. It's such an integral part of our UU existence. And that song, again, is about marching and singing and using music as a way of expressing our values and our social justice ideals and things of that nature. The song that we just sang before, I'm Willing, again, she's sang this so many times at this conference because it's I'm willing, even when it feels really hard, even when despair overwhelms us. We need to keep moving forward and we need to keep doing the things because if we feel hopeless, we will lose. And I can see why there are days I wake up and I'm like, that's why I threw the handful of stones in there. I'm like, this week, it's been a rough week. It's not a bad week, just a lot of things happened, right? And I'm juggling, oh my God, I don't even tell you. I'll tell you later when we talk about announcements, I'll share one of the things I'm struggling with. But those struggles, right? It's so easy to just go, oh, why bother? I think I'm just going to give up. Like, I'm not going to listen to the news. I'm not going to do the things. I'm not going to, why it doesn't matter. Does it matter? It does. Remember what Edward Everett Hale says. You can't do everything. If you can do something, you need to do it. I'm paraphrasing, but you know the saying. We've got to do something. We have to do something, and we should not despair even when it gets hard. And that's the lesson I try to teach my kids, right? Like, it gets hard, you know what? Sometimes it is going to be hard. Life's not easy. But what matters is learning from mistakes and having the resilience to work through those things. That is what's most important. We're going to hear the next song. Our last song will be a song called Harriet Tubman. And that's also by Holly Near. And I'll talk about that a little bit more as I introduce it later. But again, she's highlighting, right, the importance of Black women in this movement for justice and fairness. And when someone's not free, we're all not free. When someone is held in chains, we're all held in chains. That we, as a community, we all rise and fall based on how we treat the least in our community. And that's so important. Now, if you ask Holly, what songs were probably the most political, the most important to her, this one in particular is one that pops up. It's called I'm Not Afraid. And it's kind of a catchy little tune, but it talks about how she's not afraid of Jesus or Allah or the Bible or the Quran. She's afraid of what people are doing in the name of those books and those people. That's what she's afraid of. She's not anti-religion, but she's anti-hypocrisy, anti-self-serving bias about God believes in hating people, so I'm going to hate people. It's all that part of that. So I'm going to let Katie, go ahead and want to play that next song. It's kind of way up the volume a little.
I ain't afraid. I ain't afraid. I ain't afraid. I ain't afraid of your Yahweh. I ain't afraid of your Allah. I ain't afraid of your Jesus. I'm afraid of what you do in the name of your God. I ain't afraid of your churches. I ain't afraid of your temples. I ain't afraid of your praying. I'm afraid of what you do in the name of your God. Rise up to your higher power. Free up from fear, it will devour you. Watch out for the ego of the hour. The ones who say they know it all, the ones who will impose it on you. I ain't afraid of your Yahweh. I ain't afraid of your Allah. I ain't afraid of your Jesus. I'm afraid of what you do in the name of your God. I ain't afraid of your churches. I ain't afraid of your temples. I ain't afraid of your praying. I'm afraid of what you do in the name of your God. Rise up and find a higher story. Free up from the gods of war and glory. Watch out for the threats of purgatory. The spirit of the wind will make a killing off a sinner's sake. I ain't afraid of your Bible. I ain't afraid of your Torah. I ain't afraid of your Quran. Don't let the letter of the law obscure the spirit of your love. It's killing us. I ain't afraid of your Yahweh. I ain't afraid of your Allah. I ain't afraid of your Jesus. I'm afraid of what you do in the name of your God. I ain't afraid of your churches. I ain't afraid of your temples. I ain't afraid of your praying. I'm afraid of what you do in the name of your God. I ain't afraid of your money. I ain't afraid of your culture. I ain't afraid of your choices. I'm afraid of what you do in the name of your God. I ain't afraid of your Sunday. I ain't afraid of your spirit. I ain't afraid of your teachers. I'm afraid of what you do in the name of your God. I ain't afraid of your Sabbath. I ain't afraid of your borders. I ain't afraid of your dances. I'm afraid of what you do in the name of your God. I ain't afraid of your children. I ain't afraid of your music. I ain't afraid of your stories. Afraid of what you do in the name of your God. I ain't afraid of your Yahweh. I ain't afraid of your Allah. I ain't afraid of your Jesus. I'm afraid of what you do in the name of your God. I ain't afraid.
All right, well, that plays out. I mean, that song sort of exemplifies why many of us are probably sitting in these pews, right? That we have been in more mainstream faith traditions. Some of us are fortunate enough, like Tom and Joy and whatever, who grew up in the faith, but I didn't. I grew up in a very sort of repressive Catholic church, and where my identity as a lesbian and as a woman was pretty much minimalized. I mean, and I joke about this with you all, but I'm like, if I wanted to be Pope, I couldn't be Pope. Now, I don't want to be Pope, but if I wanted to be, I'm not allowed to be Pope. And I don't understand why. Like, that symbolism makes no sense to me. If I've got a good message to share, I want to be able to share it, right? So, again, that I'm not afraid really gets to how what we're seeing in the political sphere now is about religious groups that believe their way is the only way. There's no negotiation. There's no compromise. And as whether you like or not like Barry Goldwater called it, right? He said years ago, when you put religion in politics, we run into a problem, because politics are about negotiation and religion is not. You either believe or you don't believe. And we're a little, out of time that here in a UU church, because we believe all the areas, all the paths could be valuable, and you all get to choose your own path. I'm not going to tell you what to believe. Sort of omnism, I think it's called, right? Something along that line. Is that what it is? De-omnism? So the goal, of course, for us is that we embrace all of that. And that's why people don't like us. I mean, I had an exchange. I know it was Facebook, but it was an exchange. And I had a conversation with someone who said they were looking for a church. And I said, all these people are like, oh, come to my church and come to my church. And these all big, mega Christian churches. And I said to her, she didn't say what she was looking for. She just said she wanted to go back to church. I said, what are you looking for? Tell me what you're looking for. And so she said she was looking for something that had a Bible study to it. I'm like, okay, so being a UU is not going to be good for her, because it's not really what we do. We'll have our starting point, which I'll talk about in a bit. But we don't really do Bible study in a traditional sense of that. We think about it as one of many holy books to do. And I'm talking to the woman, and I said, talk to the UCC church in Collinsville, the one that Jesse grew up in. I said, there's some good liberal Christian tradition churches in the area. Look around. Think about what you value with social justice and LGBT rights and civil rights, and find a church that aligns with that. And that's all I said to her, right? I said, UU's probably not for you, but here's some other things to think about. And this guy rolls in, and he's like, stay away from Unitarian Universalism because they're heretical and they don't believe in the gospel. I'm like, dude, I'm literally not here slamming any other faith tradition. You don't get to come in. Well, you are heretical. Heretical according to whom? According to you? Sure, I'll give you that. Heretical according to Hinduism or, Buddhism or Taoism? I said, maybe not so much. Right? Because what we believe in is multiple paths, multiple sources, multiple ways of thinking about what matters to us and how that inspires our values. So, we went back and forth, and I finally just said, look, the bottom line is you get to believe what you want to believe, but what you didn't need to do is come in and denigrate my faith tradition. I didn't do that to yours. And he was like, yeah, put his hands up and was like, okay, you got it. I'm like, all right, good, walk away now. So anyway, that aside, what we're looking for is obviously we embody that I'm not afraid, I think, in many respects. So, Holly really, at the end of the day, stands out as a unique individual who truly embraces this idea that music is an instrument of change. And I see this, from many different ways, where people who believe the arts plays an important role in social justice movements. I see my friend Joan Lipkin, who I adore, who goes out and she does Dance the Vote every election year. She's out there. We got people dancing and talking about getting people registered to vote. She embraces that, and we should support her in those efforts. Because, we're small, right? We can't really do all the things, but if we can find a way to support her, absolutely, we should be able to do that. And I hope that we'll be able to do that as we come up on this 2024 election cycle, which is already giving me agita, truthfully. And then, using it, I see Joan's theater company. It's the Uppity Theater Company, and she uses her theater, she uses her plays to really reinforce, right? How do we embrace social justice ideals? How do we make change in the world? So there's many people that believe that the arts themselves are the way for us to reach people to make those changes, because every culture sings. It may not sing the same way, but every culture sings. Every culture has some way of artistic expression of that sort of that right brain sort of stuff that we should be doing more of. So it's important for us to take on this mantle of leadership as you use, to embrace this sort of thing. It's why someone like a Holly Near matters to us, because these are things that are important. And it's also important, for women's music to start to adapt, to think about what matters to them, what the upcoming generations believe matters. And for many of them, gender norms, gender roles, gender identity is just irrelevant. My own daughter will say, yeah, I don't care. Like, call me whatever you want. He, she, they, whatever, So she said, I just don't care, And I'm like, you know what? I wish I had that attitude in many ways. It's like it's an indifference. It doesn't matter at all. What matters is in the heart of the individuals and what we see with people and how we connect to people. How important it is for us to make sure that we have an environment, as we do here, I believe, at First UU, that is very supportive of transgender individuals, that we create space for that. And I will tell you, from talking with Krista about this particular topic, she said, First UU, you're at the cutting edge of that. She goes, the other UU churches are not as comfortable, but you guys, you're it. You've done it. You care. I'm like, yes, and that's something we want to continue to nurture and maintain. Wrapping it up, number 6 and number 7 both focus on how we interact with the world in terms of larger institutions like world community and peace and justice and interdependence. And I think that that's the role of women's music. That's the role of Holly Near, and that's where that alignment, is so important. Change is coming, folks, for us personally, but also in the world. We have a huge change ahead of us, some scary stuff for all of us, but I am willing. Do not despair. Let's continue working hard. Let's do the things that we need to do. Let's get people out there voting, using their voice, whatever it might be, getting people who feel disenfranchised to be part of this broader mission and broader movement, because those are the things that matter to us. That and poverty and racism and food insecurity and climate change and all the things that really matter. The rest of it is all, it just doesn't matter as much. Those are the big issues. Anyway, thank you and have a great day. All right, last song, Harriet Tubman by Holly Near. I chose this because, as I was sort of explaining before, it kind of exemplified the social justice movement of the Black Lives Matter and the importance of the work that Tubman did. You should have the lyrics here in front of you. She did this as a Black woman to lift up people from slavery. It's all too clear from the women's rights movement that Black women have been the heart and soul of women's rights, and it's about time we see and honor that. All we have to do is look at recent elections in the South, especially in Georgia, to see that Black women they have done to lift all of us up. Yeah, to Stacey Abrams. So we'll listen to the next song, sing along since you've got the lyrics. If not, just sit back and listen and enjoy the wonderful tone of Holly Near. I'm sweating.
One night I dreamed I was in slavery. About 1850 was the time. Sorrow was the only sign, and nothing around to ease my mind. Then out of the night appeared a lady leading a distant pilgrim band. First mate, she said, pointing her hand, make room aboard for this young woman, singing, come on up, I got a lifeline, come on up to this train of mine, come on up, I got a lifeline, come on up to this train of mine. She said her name was Harriet Tubman, and she drove for the underground, for the railroad. Hundreds of miles we traveled onward, gathering slaves from town to town, seeking every lost and found, setting those free that once were bound. Somehow my heart was growing weaker, I held on the wayside sinking sand. Finally did this woman stand, she lifted me up and took my hand, singing, come on up, I got a lifeline, come on up to this train of mine. Come on up, I got a lifeline, come on up to this train of mine. Who are these children dressed in red? They must be the ones that Moses led. Who are these children all dressed in red? They must be the ones that Moses led. Singing, come on up. I got a lifeline. Come on up to this train of mine. Come on up. I got a lifeline. Come on up to this train of mine. She said her name was Harriet Tubman, and she drove for the Underground Railroad. Come on up, I got a lifeline. Come on up to this train of mine. Come on up, I got a lifeline. Come on up, come on up, I got a lifeline.
If you haven't seen or seen the I guess it's on TV. It's one of the Netflix channels or something, or read the book, The Underground Railroad. It's fabulous, and it has a really realistic portrayal of what slavery was like. It's not beneficial, like Mr. DeSantis. They didn't learn any real skills. They just complied. But don't get me started today on that one. But it also uses that metaphor of the railroad and how people had to get on the railroad to move about. So it's a really wonderful read, and I recommend it certainly for anybody interested in sort of reading something kind of powerful. So let's move to stewardship. Remember, if someone could pick up thank you. The stewardship is about financial donations as well as volunteering time, talent, and treasure. We continue to need your support always for worship, coffee hour, ushering. If you have recommendations and anybody you'd like to see in the pulpit, let me know. I'll reach out. I don't have to be here all the time. Would like to, make sure we can bring in new voices and new ideas. And if anybody is kind of like, I'm thinking about it, but I don't know, I'm feeling a little shy about it, come talk to me. It's fun. You'll enjoy it. If you can't write a check or help, certainly help out with offering your time and volunteering where need be. Give what you can because all of your gifts are needed for our church to prosper. You may mail your gift. The addresses and information seen on the screen above. Or you can use Givelify or PayPal. Although I heard there's a new program out there that we could use Venmo, and we may drop PayPal and try to do something else because PayPal, the cash flow problem with PayPal is really enormous and annoying because they don't give us our money for months. So if you're willing to donate your time or talent, let me know. Let a board member know and give what you can, what you're able, because you are a generous people. So thank you. So please join me in our offering prayer. May this offering equip us to inspire love and to seek justice. Quickly, because I know we're running out of time here. Announcements. Couple of things. We have In-Gathering on the 17th of September. I know we've originally, when I was planning this with Krista and then Claudia, we were hoping to do a picnic. We'll give you more details about that as we get closer. But yeah, the plan on the 17th, we'll do something fun. It'll be nice. But on that note, even before I sort of dive into thinking about that, if you've got an ear to the ground with all sorts of things around COVID and things like that. Obviously, there's a new strain out there. They believe it is much more resistant to the current iteration of vaccines that we've had. Numbers are starting to go up little by little, so we do need to monitor that more closely and make sure that we are in compliance here in the sanctuary because we want to, again, keep our place safe for those that need it to be safe. And we have a church member that has a young one that had open heart surgery. So that's the kind of thing we're protecting. It's not random. It's about protecting those people, those little ones that need people to protect them. So anyway, so just keep that in mind. You'll be hearing more from us as we monitor numbers, and if we need to go back to no coffee hour, I'm sorry, gang. I know it's coffee, but we may need to do that. So I'm preparing you in advance. I want you to be thinking about that. Make sure we're ready to understand that. I would love in the next couple weeks, Jen, maybe we can get the kids to decorate the tree for the fall. We have the stuff, they don't need to do it today, but I'm just saying maybe before in-gathering. If we can do it before in-gathering, that would be lovely. We'll talk about that. Yeah, exactly. So we've got the stuff. It's been bare because I finally found the Pride things in the beginning of July. So, yeah, well, it happens. I didn't know what we had and what we didn't have, so things were all over the place, so we're good. Pride celebration, speaking of which, again, just as a reminder, we have September 9th will be Alton Pride, so we'll need some people to come volunteer for that. Probably that will be us doing most of the attending to the booth. I won't use the gendered name there, but we need people in the booth attending to support. But also the 23rd and 24th is Tower Grove Pride. We are sharing a booth with the other UU churches in the area. We paid for it only because we paid for it last year and didn't use it. So no big deal, but everybody's going to pull their weight in terms of supporting. So as soon as I get connections with those folks, I'll be putting a call out for volunteers, for people who can put in a few hours here or there just to sit at the booth, share information. I know I'll be working with Claudia and Krista, and I guess I forgot who the minister was at, who's the minister at First Church? Is it Karen? Okay. At First Church. Yeah, First Church of St. Louis. I can't remember her name. Exactly, right. It's right there. I can see it. I think it begins with a K, but I can't remember now. So anyway, First Church, and then, of course, people at Emerson who currently do not have a minister. So we'll be coordinating to make sure we've got just enough volunteers there to be able to support that. So we have that. And then the last of the month will be the 30th in LeClaire Park in Edwardsville at the Unity Fest, and being a big part of that. So just so you guys are aware of that. Now, shifting, repairs downstairs done. Hallelujah. So we're done there. What I have been busy with this last week, I mean, the whole board has been, obviously, is juggling with a potential buyer who's like being a little resistant. I don't know how to explain it other than that. They're not willing to put the numbers out there, and I'm like, make an offer. Just tell me what the number is. Oh, well, I don't want to insult. Well, oy vey. So yes, please insult me. Start the conversation if you care about it. Clearly they don't. So we are planning. I know our meeting Monday night, Nancy, right, is we're going to just finalize who the broker is going to be, and hopefully to have it by the end of the week on the market, just so you're aware. So look for that. We're going to have to call a special meeting because we have some ideas about what we would like to do, and this is going to require a vote of the congregation about where we would like to go and how we would like to proceed doing that. I'm not going to give more detail on it now, other than look for, after we discuss this Monday at our board meeting, we'll put out a call for a meeting for us to all come together to make some decisions. And because I don't want to make that for you. This is a collaborative discussion about what we're going to do. So we could do it. Let me just ask really quickly, though. We could do it on a Sunday after church, like do it right here. We can do it via Zoom, like we do our regular annual meeting, or we could literally just make it a Zoom meeting. And we could figure out a night that might work for people and just do it as a Zoom meeting. It's up to you all. You don't have to tell me now, but if you want to sort of whisper in my ear as we go out into the coffee hour, let me know how you would prefer to do it. I think probably it would be best to just do it on a Sunday, but I just want to make sure that we're all in agreement what we're doing there. And like I said, we think we've identified something that we like, but our trick is sort of how do we juggle the things. So we'll keep you posted on that as we move forward on where we would move to, as well as when we would do it and all those kinds of things. That's next on our agenda. Any other announcements? Any RE announcements, Jen?
RE next week.
Woohoo! RE next week, folks. Awesome. I'll be camping with my daughter next week, so just so you know. But we have Michelle Bassett, who used to be, maybe some of you know her as Michelle Hudson, but Michelle Bassett has agreed to also help with RE, which is fabulous. So we're gonna, anybody that wants to work in RE, we want to do background checks on you, just to have it on record, because we need to do that on an annualized basis. So all of us will be, I have to go up, everybody's got to go up and do that on a regular basis, just so you know. Other than that, I think that's about it. So I will move on to extinguishing the chalice. Okay, The light of truth and meaning cannot be put out. We are keepers of this flame until we meet again. Our closing words is number 680 in the Gray Hymnal by Barbara Peskin. Because of those who came before, we are. In spite of their failings, we believe. Because of and in spite of the horizons of their vision, we too dream. I thought that really aligned beautifully with some of the messages from today. So have a beautiful day, and we will see you soon. And we'll conclude with on the back of that's where you had the Harriet Tubman song is The Wonder of a Woman, which was also a Holly Near song. And she is not a Holly Near song. Okay, sorry, it was not a Holly Near song. So Wonder of a Woman, just a song about women.
It's a UU.
Oh.
Grace Lewis McLaren is a woman UU songwriter.
Oh, beautiful. Fabulous. All right. Well, there you go. I stand corrected. So thank you for finding that one. Here we go. Thank you very much. Just, I missed this, but the last one, if there's flyers out on the table out there, starting point and introduction to the UU journey. Classes are Monday evening, 6:30 Central Time, Zoom link. Claudia will be leading this. It's about your journey, sharing our stories and spiritual roadmaps, the Unitarian Universalist journey and the journey of our church, our journey together in the three paths of UU, part 1 and part 2. So if you're interested in that, even if you've been a long time UU, there's always something new to learn, so please enjoy and hope you'll participate in that so we can keep our adult RE education thing thriving and moving along. Have a great day, everybody. I'm roasting up here. Melting. It's all the emotion. What? Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Mm.